Okay, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you had a good lunch. You may have noticed that the lunch was slightly longer than normal. It's because we sometimes feel that these conferences, you don't get enough time to talk to each other, network, as they say, but also a chance to go around the exhibition, and particularly today because there's quite a lot of interesting digital businesses, so we thought it would be interesting for you to get a chance to experience those. And we know from the Twitter feed that there's actually quite a lot of comments already about the drones and the Google Cardboard and the various other items, so this is quite interesting. So as you know, the theme of today's conference is what do we need to do as a country and as businesses to be digital ready? This has been going through this morning when we've been talking a lot about content marketing and the importance of mobile. And I'm now going to hand over to Isabel for another one of our Barcelona link-ups. We're hoping that there won't be a Blair Witch Project moment like this morning. Okay?
Yeah.
Isabel, over to you.
So I can see Barcelona on this screen, and I see they're still busy with the other speaker. So I thought, let's get to know each other before we're heading to Barcelona. So I was wondering, who of you works for a DMO in this room? Can you raise your hand? Okay. And who of you works for a tourism business? Oh, a lot more hands. And who's an entrepreneur? His own company? Yeah. So that's good to know. Well, maybe before I start introducing Chris Chambers from Queensland, everybody probably have heard the Best Job of the World campaign. Who knows about the Best Job in the World campaign? Almost everybody. And who thinks this campaign was a social media campaign? Only 2 people. Who thinks, oh, more. Who thinks it was a PR campaign? And who thinks it was a traditional advertising campaign? No one. Well, let me tell you that the Best Job of the World started with a traditional advertising. They just posted a job in a newspaper. And accidentally, this became more viral, Press PR took it out, picked it up, and suddenly everybody on social media was talking about it, which is fascinating because I know from Chris that they never had the intention to make it a social media campaign. It suddenly became a big social media campaign. And that's what you see a lot of times when you're doing campaigns. Sometimes a campaign on an offline campaign becomes more bigger because of social. So who knows about the new campaign which they launched last year, Room 753? No one? So Room 753? No? So Room 753 is a campaign which they invited the world's biggest travel bloggers. They invited, I think, 20 big travel bloggers. They invited them to come to Queensland. And what was so special about the campaign? Each blogger would stay for 2 weeks in Queensland. They would get a personalized trip. So, for example, I know that one big Instagrammer from Europe went to Queensland, and he would meet up with a famous photographer. And together, they would have, shared a passion about photography, but he would show the Instagrammer the most beautiful places. So what happened for the Instagrammer, his name is Eelco Roos, @Croyable on Instagram, he had an amazing experience. And besides, the other week, they would put the travel blogger or the Instagrammer in a personalized room. And what happened, because if you really work with the big nomad bloggers from the US, or some of them are even live in the UK, some of them don't have a house. They travel from country to country, and they travel from blog trip to blog trip. And what Queensland realized that some of these bloggers would really want to stay at a certain place for a longer period of time so that they can create content. So what happened, because they invited the bloggers for 2 weeks, the second week they created a lot of content because they had like a personalized experience. So there was one lady, for example, from India, who was showing, who entered the room. She made an amazing video about it, and she was showing like they had her wedding pictures on the wall. They had her favorite movies of all times, like I think Finding Nemo and what was it? A holiday movie. And they had like Canon devices which they could try out. They even gave her a very fancy dress because she told Queensland that she would like to feel like a lady again. And what happened is they didn't pay any of these bloggers because they knew if we're going to give them an extraordinary experience, they will want to come to Queensland. So at the end, they have created a lot of content which still people are talking about it. So that's maybe a nice case study to share with you. So if you Google Room 753, there are some videos online about it as well. And I still see that they're not online yet. So maybe I can ask Steven to wander around, because I was also very interesting to know if you, all of you are really active with social media. So who of you are active on Instagram, for example? Oh, that's a big group. And are you already doing campaigns on Instagram? Raise your hands if you're doing campaigns. Not so many. Which of you have already tried the Instagram advertisements? Nobody. And Instagram advertising is an interesting advertising model, because not a lot of companies are still active on Instagram. And who's using Twitter? And who's using Twitter as a customer service? So, okay, that's interesting. And who's using Twitter as a PR tool, just to broadcast messages? That's an interesting. So you use Twitter more as a broadcasting than as a customer service. So, Steven, maybe you can ask people who raise their hand why they're using Twitter more as a broadcast instead of a customer service.
Does anyone feel the need to express its opinion, or do I need to attack someone with my mic? Let's see, who raised his hand? Probably nobody.
Yeah, I saw him, and he was like...
This is a man with guts.
We're using Twitter as a broadcast service because we've not been to this conference before today. Our eyes have been opened.
So then after this conference, let's say Monday, we see a changing habit of that you use Twitter?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, perfect.
Maybe not Monday.
But you should give us your Twitter handle. No, I'm just joking. Yeah.
Yeah, keep an eye on @bootsandpaddles. And you can correct me if we're not doing it right in a couple of months.
Okay. And who believes that social media play an important role in the decision-making process of a customer? Can you raise your hand? So who believes?
This man believes, and we've got a believer here. Would you like to explain to us what the impact of social media for your business is?
I think one of the key things about social media is it adds credibility to what the messages you're putting out there. I think there's a general belief that a lot of people take what you say about your business with an element of cynicism, but if it's their peers or the wider social media, they actually believe what people are saying about your business, so it adds credibility.
Yeah, that's correct. Did you know that I think it was Skyscanner who did a research among Facebook users, and I think 50% of the Facebook users said that they're being inspired to book the same holiday their friends did after seeing their photos. And normally when I give a presentation to a room like this, I always show my personal photos of my trip and explaining that some of my friends booked a trip because I went to a certain country. And they responded on my post saying, oh, this is much nicer than I expected. For example, I went to India. I've traveled like from January to July. I've traveled for 6 months. And I posted a lot of photos on India. But I posted places where not every traveler goes to in India. Say Sikkim, which is between Nepal and Bhutan, and the Andaman Islands. And there was one lady, she told me, wow, I always had the idea of India that it would be very busy and dirty, but seeing these photos, you changed my opinion about India. And when I saw her reaction, I was surprised, and it fascinated me because I thought, wow, I always thought, okay, I can inspire people because of my photos, but I can also, have an impact, have an influence on their perception of a brand. Because I think a brand nowadays is the stories people have about a destination and the stories people hear about a destination. It's not the brand who decide what a brand is. It's the stories you create. And as DMOs, you're part of those stories. But there's so many other stories, like your stories are only very small compared to all the other stories. But I see they're online, they're starting with Chris, so I'm going to introduce Chris very shortly. So Chris Chambers, he has been running the most amazing tourism campaigns in the world. He's a sportsman. I think he just ran the New York Marathon, and he likes golf and football, but never mentioned the All Blacks, because he's really a diehard. And he's going to talk about mobile apps and iBeacons. So let's go live to Barcelona to see Chris Chambers speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick, and thanks, Ramona. Hello, everyone in Scotland, and hello, everyone here. I must start by saying I am feeling every bit of the 30 hours of travel that I've had to get here and the 10-hour time difference at the moment. I'm very much looking forward to a coffee in a little while. As Nick mentioned, I'm here to talk a little bit about our learnings in mobile and how we're using beacons, but I thought it would be prudent to just stop momentarily and reflect on some of the great points that have been made by Doug, by Heidi, and then by Juancho just now, in that I really think that it is the point in time where, as tourism organisations, we need to redefine the approach that we are taking. I love the point that was made that we are no longer in control of the marketing for our destinations, and that's very much going to come through in a digital strategy that we'll be launching at the start of next year, which moves from very much about developing a digital strategy to how do we engage those businesses in our constituency who are doing digital very well, and how do we put them right at the core of all of the marketing that we're doing. So we'll be looking to start to develop groups or clusters, as Heidi talked about this morning, around the different experiences in the different destinations. And as part of the entry process to get into those groups, these businesses need to demonstrate that they do digital well and that they deliver a first-class experience so that people who go and do those tours, dine at those restaurants, or have those experiences will be wanting to share their experiences out with their family and friends on social media and through the various channels. We all know that social is very important, and we see that as a great way of us developing more of a competitive edge in this day and age. So thank you very much to the point that those guys have made. What am I here to talk about? I head up a part of Tourism and Events Queensland starting in October. It's a new team. Previously I headed up digital marketing, but we have developed a new team which is, from a functional perspective, is the publicity teams, the digital marketing teams, and also the familiarisation teams. And it's all about experience engagement and the digital channels. How do we get the visitors to our destinations sharing their experiences more broadly? When I'm not at work, Juancho just mentioned a little bit of FOMO. The image there on the right-hand side, that's me recently completed the New York Marathon. About a year ago, I had a real FOMO moment where all my friends started talking about doing this marathon. Never run sort of 5 kilometres previously. Friday night, few glasses of red, seemed a great idea at the time, and before I knew it, I was signed up to run the marathon. So FOMO, and how do we get communities engaged? And there was about 40 of us who went and did the marathon. So getting communities engaged is something that we're really excited about. I thought it would also be useful because I noticed a lot of different business ways or methodologies for DMOs here in Europe. Our job is really to identify how do we sustainably grow visitation into our destinations. We have been challenged with a significant task, which is to double visitor expenditure in our destinations from $15 billion in 2012-2013 to $30 billion by 2020. We are doing that by developing a better portfolio, a more balanced portfolio of source markets. China, for us, at some stages was growing at double digits, or still is growing at double digits, but it's only one market for us. And we need to develop strategies that really, as has been talked about along the way here, really flattens out that visitation through some of those other times of the years. Events is another way that we do that. So we're in charge with securing events to happen across Queensland's destinations, and a significant portion of our budget is actually invested in securing events that we can put into the shoulder periods to drive visitation into those other times. And our vision is to inspire the world to experience the best address on earth. We are very parochial about Queensland and the beautiful destinations, and that is something that we very much live to do. How does that transform to, or translate to my day job? We really see when we are undertaking projects, we think about this. How do we extend the connection between people and place? And one of the ways that we do that, which I'll be talking about very shortly, is our mobile project. The vision, if you like, for my team is that we curate, more and more now curate, and inspire positive stories about Queensland's destinations and events and connect them with the right people. So we talk a lot about connecting the right message with the right person on the right channel at the right time. And yes, we do believe in the 5 stages of travel. In fact, more and more, we believe in this. And we are starting to work on projects that really do move our role from very much being in dreaming and planning through booking, less and less. I'm very much on the no side of should a DMO be engaging in booking. I think that there are other people out there who do that much better than we ever will be able to, and they invest significantly more money into that area. But more and more now, we're moving into the experiencing and the sharing part of the holiday planning cycle, and that's where this project really came from. So TEQ's digital footprint is significant. We believe very much that each of these different communities has a different role to play. There's some talk about Instagram this morning. As an example, I wouldn't say 100% because I'm sure that there has been a couple of photos that have slipped into our feed over the time that is from our image library or is a shot that we've taken. But for the most part, 99% or very much all of our content that we share is from a visitor to our destination or from a tourism business. And we use the This Is Queensland hashtag as a primary way of pulling that content together and then being able to share that. That This Is Queensland hashtag has continually grown. Over the last few months, the amount of content that's being shared has declined. We're seeing between 6 and 8% every month of new content being contributed, but that's still 20,000 or so new images every month that's being contributed by our community with authorization for us to use that content out across our channels. We very definitely still believe in email marketing. We've got a strong database globally of around 1.2 million people who we communicate with very frequently about events, about holiday deals, about destination information, and email marketing is still very much a cornerstone of our digital marketing strategy. So the This Is Queensland application is only one part of our digital footprint. We launched it earlier this year, but one of the things that we really considered, and these statistics were quite telling when we reviewed them, was that 79% of people who download an application will only use that application once or twice. That number then falls to 16% who will use an application 3 or more times. So of course, when we started to develop this app, we wondered, why bother? What's the point? Well, the inspiration for the app came from 3 key trends that we identified. Obviously, increasing trust in word of mouth as a source for selecting a holiday destination. And our friends at TA have got some great research that shows that digital, online and social media is a great way of getting a destination onto someone's bucket list. Doug talked about yesterday about how Tourism Australia have done a great job of developing a strong social media presence but that showed that our growth that we've had over that time was nowhere near as strong as other destinations. And to that, I would say that bikinis are stats are very much like bikinis, right? They show you a little bit, but not everything. So there's a lot of other factors at play there, and Doug talked about that as well. Obviously, Australia is a long-haul destination. It's an expensive destination. We've had currency issues. Now the dollar has weakened substantially. We are starting to see visitors and long-haul visitors come back very strongly to Australia. We know that mobile is very important in the holiday planning cycle, and also once people are at a destination. People don't think about their mobile phone as a mobile phone anymore. It's mostly probably a camera, and that's certainly the case when people are in Australia from an international destination. They don't have data, they're just there, they've got their camera, which is their phone, and they don't leave them at home. And there's also increased desire for Wi-Fi, which is something that we are very poor at providing to visitors in Australia. In Australia, it's probably the norm rather than and the exception for hotel guests to be charged $25 to $30 a night for Wi-Fi. So we need to provide ways of connecting visitors to our destination with free Wi-Fi so that they can share those photos with their family and friends, and in turn get our destinations on more holiday bucket lists. So what did we think about when thinking about what could we do in this space? We genuinely, sincerely thought about identifying 5 to 10 iconic locations in Queensland where we would work with providers to install Wi-Fi infrastructure. We've seen other tourism destinations do that. For example, Tourism Victoria, they have installed Wi-Fi on the Great Ocean Road at the 12 Apostles, and our friends there report great use of that Wi-Fi. But we decided that we're a tourism organisation, a destination marketing or destination management organisation. We're not a telco. We have now seen the availability of Wi-Fi really increase quite rapidly, even over the last 12 to 18 months. As an example, with Hertz, as well as hiring the car and a baby seat and a GPS, you can now hire a Wi-Fi hotspot in Australia. We have started to see some hotels start to provide free Wi-Fi more readily. Certainly city councils are definitely investing far greater in that area than they were 2 to 3 years ago. So Wi-Fi is becoming more prominently available. We had also previously developed an application back in 2009. It was iPhone only. It was quite simple in terms of the functionality. Really, it was maps that plotted all of our tourism products onto it. And so the functionality was quite limited. We decided that that wasn't a good option because we've certainly seen Android take up with its usage in Australia, and we could see the importance of providing multiple platforms. And also new technology meant that there was far greater enhancements or systems that we could provide to visitors. So we decided to break new ground, and that's where the This Is Queensland app came from. The app is available on Android and iPhone. We launched that in January this year at the same time as we launched a completely new website environment, and since then we've seen some great usage. We are very precise about what the tool is supposed to do. Definitely one of the less areas that we see people using the app is in the planning phase, because we know that they're more likely to use our website for that. We see this more as something that a visitor would use whilst they're in destination, and then certainly when we're trying to encourage them to share content with their family and friends. So this definitely falls in those 3 areas of the holiday planning cycle. So what's the key app functionality? Well, the key app functionality, one of the most important things for us, that we didn't want to become part of that statistic where an app would be downloaded and used once or twice. So we worked with the developers to make sure that key functionality of the application would work in the background. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we talk about the GPS functionality or the location-based services. So long as the application is installed on the device, those functionalities will operate. We have a database in Australia called the ATDW, Australian Tourism Data Warehouse. It's a nationally owned database. There's around about 50-something thousand tourism businesses across Australia that are listed in that database, and we use that as the core point or the single point of content for all of our digital channels. So I know earlier when the team from Antwerp were talking about their apps that they have multiple sources. We only have one point of content contact, and we use that for all of our channels. Of course, there's destination information, which also comes from the ATDW. We have incorporated into the content, into the application, content that's trending. So I have some screenshots of that, but that is to give the app currency. What's happening right now in the destination? We also allow people to search for free Wi-Fi or paid Wi-Fi if they'd rather pay for it. I don't know why. The location-based services, which will give some examples about that shortly. And also, we developed a Queensland account. Now, that was very important because it's the platform for us to leap off with future enhancements that I'll give you a bit of an update on later on in the presentation. But people can create a Queensland account within the application. The consumer benefit that we could see was that at the time 35% of traffic coming to our websites was on mobile. It's probably closer to 40% or so now, and I know some people are reporting up to 50% of traffic from mobiles. So we could see that there was a definite need. More importantly for us, Queensland is a huge state. It's about 1.8 million square kilometres. And there are huge parts of our state where people do go to visit where there is absolutely no internet connection, and we wanted to provide a tool that people could use in those destinations where they could still access content while they're on the go. Another consumer benefit is the location-based services. We really wanted these to be something that added value to the visitor whilst they were in destination. And we also have EDM information or EDM functionality where people can subscribe and let us know where and when they're going on holiday. And a week before they come into Queensland, we'll send them an email that is tailored to their arrival dates and to the destination that they're visiting. And then we'll also send them an email a week after they return from holiday that really prompts them to share their photos with their family and friends using relevant hashtags and whatever else. So we're really trying to extend that connection with the visitor before and after the holiday through that. In terms of industry, they really wanted us to deliver additional leads. Our old website was designed or built in 2009, which is a long time in internet years. There was no responsive nature to it at all, and it was a poor experience. So we saw this as part of the way of delivering a good experience for visitors. We also had great incorporation or integration of content from region into the application. So part of our key educational pieces was informing industry that when they're sharing content on Instagram to use the This Is Queensland hashtag to make sure that they were tagging us into their photos, because we take a direct feed of that content into the application. And that's something that industry really want to see. They love it when we feature their content or hero them across our social media channels. So the application itself, some of the functionality is very standard. The image on the left is the what's trending. We call through content there we have an event that's upcoming. We'll call through an Instagram photo from the regional tourism organisation. We'll call the same thing through from a regional tourism organisation's Twitter account. A video from our YouTube channel which is relevant to that destination. And then also some content from our blog. Of course, there's a mapping feature which allows someone to have a look and see what products or what's nearby, restaurants, hotels, day tours, all of that type of thing. There's a free Wi-Fi finder, and then people can also favourite products or information within the app which saves that into their account. I already talked about the email element, but you can see the idea here is to, in a visual way, try and engage the user of the app to provide us with information about where they're going on holiday so that we can keep in contact with them. So the location-based services are really where the more newer functionality is built into the app. There are two different types of location-based services that we use in the application. The first is beacons, and the second is geofences. So a beacon operates on a very small scale, and the presenter earlier talked about that, where they become very good in confined spaces. They really broadcast a message between sort of 10 and 100 metres. They run off AA batteries, and they're pretty dumb. All they do is send out a message every millisecond or so looking for someone who's got our app. And when someone who does have our app comes nearby, it pushes a push notification to the phone. We're actually having a lot more success with the geofences. Geofences operate on a much larger scale. They've got a radius of up to 50 kilometres, and we have these centred around the main access points across the state. You can see there that's one for Brisbane. And what happens, exactly the same type of behaviour. When someone enters that geofence or that geocircle, a push notification will come through to the phone letting them know that they're in Brisbane, welcoming them to Brisbane. We share with them the hashtags to try and encourage them to use the hashtags so that we can then see that content and share that with our audiences. But there are other uses that we have for those, and I'll talk about a couple of those now. So here's an example of a user story of someone searching for content. They can search for content based on all of the different categories that we have. They can look at that on a map and then save that down to their favourites. This is an example of a beacon that we have at the Cairns airport. The beacons work without data. So they do need Bluetooth to be enabled on the device, but you don't need data to be operating on the device. When someone comes within the 100 metres of this beacon and they have our app installed, we'll push a notification to them that welcomes them to the region. And when they swipe that, it will open the application and take them through to the tropical North Queensland information. A bit of a background about the destination, key highlights, things to see and do. Another example is with the geofences. If I drive into a geofence region, I'll get this notification. When I swipe that, it will go through to the Hot 5 or the What's Trending section of the application, really trying to deliver currency and relevant information to the user. We're also using it to deliver content efficiencies. So we have very definitely moved to a content curation rather than content creation approach. We get great content provided by our community, but there are times when we have a specific need to develop content that no one else has. An example here is we wanted to develop some content about the cassowary, which is a large bird in North Queensland, and we have developed these geofences around certain areas where you can see cassowaries, which is quite rare to see. And if you go within one of those zones, you will swipe it, and it can take you through to content that we've developed about that. We're actually extending this type of geofence within the application out more broadly now to try and drive more visitors and more interest in the content that we're creating and curating. We're also starting to use these beacons at events. So I'm a huge golf fan, and we have a golf tournament on the Gold Coast every year, which is the PGA Championships. And what we're looking to do is place these beacons at different points on the course. So it might be around the entryway, prompting people to go and check out the merchandise store, or it might be information about a particular hole on the course where something historic or something interesting is there to talk about. So how's it all gone? The results to date, we're nearing 32,000 downloads. The app has only been live since January. We're seeing a lot more engagement and use on Android devices than we are on the iOS we see a lot more engagement with the content in the app than we do on our website. So with 3.5 minutes per session on the app, but on our website it's probably closer to 1.5. And we're also seeing quite strong conversion rates. So people using the app, going through to find more information out from hotels, so going off to their websites or whatever it might be. And we've also had 9,000 accounts created. The events in the right-hand, on the right-hand side of that page, that shows you what people are mostly doing in the app. They're certainly looking at the product information. You'll notice there's a discrepancy between the accounts created number. That's because the information in the box was captured much earlier than the slides being presented. And what we're also looking at is the notifications. So you can see down the bottom there, 336 notifications being pushed. So what have we learned along the way? We've learned that beacon technology will advance very quickly. So the way that I try and describe beacons to tourism businesses in Queensland is that beacons now are like LPs in music a long time ago. Not very many people buy LPs now, they download music. We have already seen very quickly beacons push ahead. There are some beacons now that are solar powered, whereas the versions that we have operate on AA batteries. There are waterproof versions. There are versions of these things that you don't need to have an app to connect them to. They can push messages out regardless of that. So we're seeing that the beacon technology will develop quite quickly. In large areas, or a whole state, beacons are not good for engagement. So we have 120 or 130 beacons out in Queensland at the moment, mostly at airports or national parks or visitor information centres. And we're seeing much more engagement interaction with the geofences than we are with the beacons. They were definitely a great technology to bring into the app, and we will certainly leave them within the app, but we're not looking to extend that functionality for some time yet. And that's what I'm saying when I think about the role of beacons in a rollout. What's the purpose of them? For many people, they'll just be viewed as a gimmick, but we had a specific need for them. Someone mentioned it earlier also, you must allocate budget for maintenance of the applications or to make sure that you keep progressing with the functionality of the app. We allocate around about 20 to 25% of the upfront development costs on an annual basis now to make sure that we keep maintaining and enhancing the application. We have version 3 of the app in the App Store already. One of those was when iOS 9 rolled out. We needed to make some updates to the way that the content was sourced, but we have got version 3 in the App Store now. We are starting to bring in tips from locals. So we have visitor information centres in Queensland too, and they know the local destination and the destination very well. So we've started bringing in tips from those VICs to put into the app. And our next big enhancement is that we are going to look to connect our digital assets. So that's what that account is so important, is that people will be able to create their account either on our website or on our app. They'll be able to favourite products across the website, and then that information will sync between the website and the application. The reason that we see that as important is that if someone favourites Ripley's Believe It or Not on the Gold Coast, they then go to the Gold Coast on holidays and they're walking down Cavill Avenue, our phone, or their phone, will know that they have saved that product, and also that their GPS has entered within a kilometre radius of that, and we'll be able to push a notification to let them know that that product is nearby. So that's one of our big new projects. Yes, thank you.